Welcome to Lesson 143, Reflections in the Coordinate Plane. Today we're going to talk about how to reflect a point over the x-axis, how to reflect a point, and how to determine what axis a point is reflected over based on its ordered pair. Alright, so first we need to know what a reflection is. A reflection is a transformation in which a figure is flipped over a line or an axis. Alright, so in this case we're going to talk mainly about reflecting a point or a shape over an axis. So to show you an example, I'm going to make a reflection of this sentence. So I reflected this sentence on what would be a horizontal axis or a horizontal line. Now you have to remember it's like having a mirror, so everything is going to be backwards. Okay, and then a line of reflection, and I'll show you what to do for your examples in a minute. A line of reflection is a mirror between the original figure and the reflection. Right? So it's like there's an imaginary mirror halfway between the two figures. So if you look down here, we have what will be the line of reflection. So in this case, I'm using the y-axis. This is my line of reflection. So you're going to want to draw this in your notes along with these two shapes. Now, I reflected this shape over the y-axis. Notice it's backwards than its original because it's a reflection. I like to think of reflections kind of like when you're turning the page in a book. So when you take the top right corner and turn the page, it becomes the top left corner. Right? So here it was here, and then now it becomes here. So it was left, and then it becomes the right. Okay, or you have to think if you turn backwards in the book, what was the top left becomes the top right. So in your example, I just want you to put the two shapes as your reflections, so you can do and I'd put more space, don't connect them, so that way you know it's a reflection and not one big shape. Okay, and then for the line of reflection, do both of these and then draw a line or an arrow pointing to the line. Okay, so let's take a look at what happens when you do a reflection. Again, if you haven't had enough time to draw your example, please pause and get those drawn so that way you have something to go back to in case you're struggling later on. Alright, so if you look here, you have to see which corners match up. So in this case, what I did was I made them colorful for you. So the top left is going to become the bottom left because I'm reflecting across the x-axis. I want you to look at the coordinates and I want you to tell me what you notice. Right, so if you said that you noticed that the x-coordinates stayed the same, so -6, -6, but the y-coordinate changed, it just went from positive to negative, you're correct. Okay, so x-coordinate stays the same, positive to negative. Stays the same, positive to negative, stays the same, positive to negative. Right, so when you're reflecting across the x-axis, it should stay along the same vertical lines. Okay, but your other lines are going to switch. Now we're going to reflect it across the y-axis. Okay, take a look, see what you notice about the coordinates. Alright, so if you take a look at this, you'll see that the y-coordinate this time stays the same, but the x changes. Stays the same, positive or negative to positive. Stays the same, stays the same all the way over here, negative to positive, stays the same, negative to positive. Right, so when you're talking about a rule of thumb for reflections, when you are reflecting something over the y-axis, your x-coordinate is going to change signs. So if these are my original points and I'm reflecting over the y-axis, my x-coordinate changes. So -2, -4, -5, and -7 all stay the same, but my positives change all to negatives. All right, now if we reflect a figure across the x-axis, It's changing the y coordinates from negative to positive or positive to negative. So all my positive x coordinates stay the same, and then my negative y's change to positives. Right? So the way I remember it, if I'm reflecting over the y, keep the y, change the x. If I'm reflecting over the x, keep the x, change the y. All right, so let's practice one. What I'm going to do first is we're just going to practice with the coordinates, and then I'm going to draw it so you can kind of see how it works. So I'm reflecting across the y-axis on this problem, and just as a little reminder to myself, I'm going to write down, since I'm reflecting across the y, that I need to change the x. So I'm going to just write down all my y's so I remember to keep them. Right, and then I know that all of these are just going to change to positives. So my negative 2 becomes a positive 2, negative 4 becomes a positive 4, positive 4, positive 7, positive 7. Now if I go ahead and make different colored dots here. All right, I am going to show you what happens. So now where we had the negative 2, positive 4, I have a positive 2, positive 4. All right, so the dots stayed along the same horizontal line, just changed its x. And then my negative 4, positive 2, so negative 4, positive 2, became a positive 4, positive 2. My negative 4, positive negative 6 became a negative 4, positive 6. And then my negative 7, positive 3 became a positive 7, positive 3. And my negative 7, positive 5 became a positive 7, positive 5. Now, if I connect all my dots, I will come up with the same shape. However, in this case, we didn't do these two dots right here. I didn't want to get you too confused right off the bat, so I'm just going to draw those in, but you'll see that the shape is the exact same shape. It's just pointing back at itself now because, like I said, it's like turning the page of a book. All right, so now I'm going to do another example with you for the x-axis. If you'd like to try on your own, go ahead and pause, and then you can come back and check your answer. If you'd still like a little more practice with me, then stick along with me as we go over how to do this. So since I'm reflecting across the x-axis, I know that I have to change the y. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to keep all of my x's. So negative 5, negative 7, and negative 3. Let's go ahead and fix that, make it actually look like a 7. There we go. Now, all of my y's are going to change, so I have to make sure to keep the right coordinates together. So I had negative 5, positive 6, so I'm going to have negative 5, negative 6. I had negative 7, positive 2, so I'm going to have negative 7, negative 2. Negative 3, positive 2 turns into negative 3, negative 2. And again, I'm going to go ahead and put different colored dots on here so we can take a look. All right, and my green dot, which was the negative 5, positive 6, became negative 5, negative 6, so right here. And then my pink dot, which was negative 7, positive 2, right here, became negative 7, negative 2. And my purple dot, which was negative 3, negative 2, positive 2, became a negative 3, negative 2. And then if I connect my dots, I get the same shape, just backwards because, again, the x-axis is acting like a mirror. So if you see here, I have 2 sets of blocks between the x-axis and my bottom line. I should have 2 sets of blocks between the x-axis and my bottom line over here. Okay, so you should get the same size shape and the same shape when you reflect across either axis. So if you reflect and your shape doesn't stay the same, then you have done so incorrectly and you'll want to try it again. Alright, so I want you to try reflecting this shape across the y-axis, and when you come back, we'll go over your answers. Alright, so since we're reflecting across the y, I keep all of my y's, and I only change my x's. So I should have gotten negative 5, 6, negative 3, 4, negative 7, 4, negative 5, 2. And if I check this, negative 5, positive 6, negative 5, positive 6, negative 3, positive 4, negative 7, positive 4, negative 5, positive 2, same shape, different side. So you know when you're reflecting across the y-axis, it's never going to go up and down, it should always go left and right. So if you're in quadrant 1 and you're reflecting across the y, you should go to 2. If you're in 2, you should go to 1. 3 goes to 4, or 4 goes to 3. Okay, you can never, if you're reflecting across the y-axis and you go from 1 to 4, there was a bit of a mistake made. Right, again, I have another one for you to try, except for this time you're going to reflect across the x-axis. Again, try, and when you come back, we'll go over your answer. So since you're reflecting over the x-axis, you should keep your x, so 2, 2, 6, 6, and change your y. And your y changes to negative 2, negative 5, negative 2, negative 5. All right, whenever you change or reflect over the x-axis, you should be going up to down or down to up. So if you're in 1, you go to 4, 4 goes to 1, 2 goes to 3, or 3 goes to 2. All right, so we can check this out. I have 2, negative 2, 2, negative 5, and then I have 6, negative 2, and 6, negative 5. Same shape, same size, same distance away from the x-axis. I went from up to down, so I was successful in my reflection. Alright, so now what I want you to do is you're going to try the rest of these on your own. You're going to reflect each of these ordered pairs across the x-axis, then the y-axis. Okay, and then you're going to put the x-axis on top, so what you get when you reflect over the x-axis on top, and over the y-axis will go on bottom. So I'll do the first one with you so you can get a good flow here. So if I reflect across the x, my x stays the same, my y changes signs. And if I reflect this across the y, my y stays the same, and my x changes signs. In this case, since it's 0, it just stays as a 0. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to finish these last 6. And as always, if you have any questions, please post them to Edmodo so we can go over them in class.